Janice, yeah, Jenise, just like Denise, only with a J. Hi, wife.
Yes, but I'm only staying a moment. I have to go to a baseball game.
She's the pitcher. Oh, there's another couple. All righty then. I was taking names. Huh? Well, I haven't even got started really, so anyway, the last session we'll kind of open that up for some discussion and question and answers, and maybe you guys will have some insight that will help me, and I can add it to the whole package of the games. Do you have a camera? Sure. Great. Fine. Do you know how to make coffee?
No, not that machine.
You don't? I don't either.
Okay.
I'm kind of dumb. You don't? I've got a little bit. I'll just hang with what I got.
Can't be that hard.
I've made cowboy coffee. I surely can make something with that.
Back when I was in Germany, I didn't drink coffee. They used to have the make. I was a country person. I come in. I didn't drink it.
But they made you.
Looks good.
And they drank it, huh?
No, I didn't drink it.
My mom said she was there because she's sick,
Is she?
so she wants the information that we passed out to take in.
Okay. Well, you take good notes. I've tried to make it as comprehensive in the outline as I could, but obviously there's a whole lot of information I'm going to be talking about kind of from the hip. I talk kind of the way I write, and I write kind of the way I talk. You know, shoot from the hip, kind of like the one-eyed discus thrower. Can't throw very far, or the cross-eyed discus thrower, excuse me. Kind of like the cross-eyed discus thrower. He can't throw very far, but keeps the crowd on their toes. So, and that's the way I talk. So there'll be a lot of information I'll be giving to you. You can, kind of fill in between the blanks and stuff. So,
Preston,
yes,
these people would need a book.
yes, they do. It's a good thing you're here, Eddie.
Well, I have to keep you in track.
Keep me on my toes, right, like the discus thrower. Let's just start at the very beginning. I kind of titled this thing "Releasing the Power of Relationship," because really there is a power in relationship. Most, in fact, if I even bring up the Bible or Bible verses once or twice in this whole series of discussion here, I'll be surprised. Although everything I'm talking about is the principles are Bible-based, the dynamics that are involved in relationship. In fact, the very root of this, the very last thing that I talked about on the last session is the very basis of relationship. The whole Bible, as a matter of fact, is based on relationship. Everything that God has ever done or ever will do is focused on one thing, and that is relationship. When this whole sordid mess is over with at the end of all time and eternity begins, everything that has happened, everything that this great battle that's going on with the devil and the fallen angels, everything's going on in the church, everything that happened with Israel, there's only one thing that God is going to end up with at the very end. He's not going to end up with yes, there's going to be a new earth, but that's not what he's after. There's going to be a new heavens, a new creation, but that's not what he's after. There's going to be one thing that he's going to have, and that is relationship with the bride, a relationship with the people. And so all of the laws of the Bible, the Jewish laws, they broke them down into 613 laws, into separate and definitive laws. Jesus broke those, later on in the Ten Commandments, they were broken down into 10 laws. Those 10 laws, later on, remember Jesus, the Pharisees asked Jesus, what is the most important law? What is the greatest law? And he said, he broke all of the 10 Commandments down into 2 laws. He said, what? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. And the second law is like the first. He said, love thy neighbor as thyself. See, there it is, relationship again, relationship with God and relationship with people. Then, later on, Paul, in further refining the law, in Galatians 5, he says, all of the law is summed up in this one thing, in this one law. All of the law is summed up. He said, to love one another. He said all of the law, And John further clarified that in 1 John, the letters of John. He said, you can't say that you love God and hate your brethren. You can't hate other men and women and say that you love God. So that's why Paul could say that all of the law is summed up in this one law, to love one another. So you see, it's relationship. Everything the Bible is built on is founded on relationship. And so there is a power in coming to understand relationship, the dynamics involved, what we're going to be talking about, and much of what I'll talk about tonight, understanding and learning about the dynamics of relationship between husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. It's not just a marriage seminar, although I've kind of, the first session is kind of focused around the marriage relationship. I call it a marriage workshop. But these dynamics hold true in parental relationships, with your own parents, with your children, with boyfriends, with other friends, with employees and employers. So understanding these dynamics. In fact, Dale Carnegie has set up a multi-million-dollar organization based on this very thing. I can remember going to seminars, and maybe you guys have done this in the past, Eddie. When I was in the oil field with AMF Tuboscope, they would send their operations managers and sales managers and those people to seminars. We'd go to seminars where Bill Henry, guys like Bill Henry and other speakers would do motivational talking, and U.S. West and Ma Bell and all of these all of these big corporations spend millions and millions and millions of dollars training their people on the principles that I'm talking to you about here, relationship. So understanding these principles will make you, they're good for parents, make you a better parent. They'll help you in your parenting skills. They'll help you in relating to kids at the school if you're in a teaching position or whatever. So let's turn the page. Let's start right there. Cop an attitude, or else. I want to make a couple of points before we really get into this. Point number one, the importance of right attitude. I'm just going to read the thing for you. Just read along with me. Attitude is that little thing that makes the big difference. The story of life proves that it is often the minute things that spell the differences between triumph and tragedy, success and failure, victory or defeat. For example, call a girl a kitten and she'll love you. Call her a cat and you're in big trouble. Say she's a vision and you score points. Call her a sight and you got a problem. Say that her face makes time stand still and she'll melt. Say that her face will stop a clock and she'll melt you. See, it's the little things that make a world of difference, don't they? It's the small part of the blanket that hangs over the bed that keeps you warm. You don't believe that. You've never been to summer camp and had your bed short-sheeted. A watch that's 4 hours off is no problem. If it's 4 hours off, everybody knows it's wrong. You make compensation to make up for it. One that's 4 minutes off can create real problems. Again, back when I was with Tuboscope, I used to have to fly all over the country. I was headed to Houston one time and stopped in Stapleton International Airport. And I don't remember what I was doing. I still knew at this game. I had not ever traveled a lot, and I didn't realize that, if you're going to get your boarding pass, you need to be there on time or early. And so I realized it was time for me to be on the concourse and at the boarding station. So I booked it, got there a little bit late. Had to lay over the whole night. Had to call my boss, explain why I was late getting to Houston, and all going through all of that stuff. But I realized that you can explain everything. You might have been in the right. You can explain to that ticket agent why you ought to be able to have the boarding pass. But if you're 4 minutes late, that's why I put here, a plane is a lot easier to catch before it's left the ground. So, see, it's the little things that can cause some big problems. B, in the game of life, you retain that zest for living and for learning by constantly seeking to put into your mind the things which will result in growth. 1, knowledge has to be improved, challenged, and increased constantly, or it vanishes, by a man named Peter Drucker. Number 2, as long as the vegetables are green, they're still growing. Ed Green's dad. Who's Ed Green, somebody says. Let me tell you why I'm going through this copying an attitude. It's important to have the right attitude. 3 things that are difficult to do. In fact, 3 things that are next to impossible to do. Climb a fence that's leaning towards you. kiss a girl that's leaning away from you and teach somebody something that doesn't want to be taught. Make sense? Now, being a choleric, I come from, if you've been to church much, you'll hear me saying country witticisms and things like that constantly. I remember tons of things that my mother said. In fact, I just heard another one that she just used while I was down there last week. She said, charge it to the rain and let the dust, charge it to the dust and let the rain settle it. So I have to, what does that mean? I don't know. What am I getting at here? There's a lot of people that, now I'm drawing from a lot of different people. You ask, well, what makes you an expert? Well, I don't know that I'm an expert in relationships. Because like I said Sunday in church, if you want to know how to find gold, you go to people that know how to find the gold. That's where you learn it from. I have a successful relationship with my wife. I have a very successful relationship with my children. I have successful relationships with people, and so it makes me a success. Not an expert, but a success. It's because I set my mind to, now I didn't start out knowing these things. I want to tell you a little story that will illustrate what I'm getting at. None of us starts out in life knowing how to be a good marriage partner or friend, how to relate to other people. None of us starts out, but it takes a commitment to want to know, to learn. And I set out years ago determined to learn why it was that my wife and I couldn't get along. I'll share a little bit about my personal history and where we came from, because it's important. We tend to model in marriage relationships what we saw in our parents. You agree with that? We do. Sure. Very much. You've heard the term. You've heard the saying, you're just like your dad. You ever heard that before? From somebody? I know I have. Like mother, like father. Like mother, like daughter. Like mother, like daughter. You know, you hear that all the time. And really, usually when that's said in an argument or a discussion or whatever, man, it rankles the ire of the recipient of that, because that's the last thing we want to be, is like our father, usually. Usually. 99.9% of the time, because of some dysfunctional upbringing and some problems. Why? Because our dads. My dad didn't know how to be a father. My dad didn't know how to be a husband. And it was reflected in the way that he lived as a husband, as a father, as a model. And so it takes an effort. It takes work. Now, there are a lot of, I'm drawing, like I said, from a lot of different people. Gary Smalley, John Trent, Dr. Ed Cole, just, you know, dozens of different, Howard Hendricks, president of Dallas Theological Institute or Seminary, several dozens of different sources. A lot of people may have, maybe some of you have listened to some of Gary Smalley's tapes and heard some of these other things, and the attitude gets to be sometimes that, well, I've already heard all of that, and so, you know, I don't need to hear anymore. I already know it. Well, see, that's a bad attitude. Matter of fact, this man named Ed Green several years ago was at a Dale Carnegie course back in New York City. And Ed Green was an insurance salesman, a sales manager for some kind of operation, and made tons of money. I mean, in today's equivalent, he was probably worth, you know, a salary of $500,000 a year. And he went to a Dale Carnegie course, and he related a story after one of the young people in the class went to the instructor and said, I've already heard this stuff. It's not doing me a bit of good. And the instructor related this to Ed Green. And it turned out that this man, Ed Green, shared with the instructor later that when asked, did you learn anything from the class? He said, yeah, I've been to several of these, but as a matter of fact, that class that I went to helped me to know some things that I put into practice and helped me to close $1 million deal that next week. And he said, when the instructor told him what had happened, what this young man had said, he'd already heard all of this stuff. He wasn't getting anything out of it. Well, Ed Green said, well, the young man's got an attitude problem. He's got a problem with his attitude. He said, let me tell you a story about my dad. When I was a young boy, my dad took me into the garden and showed me around the vegetable garden. And as far as I knew, he said, my dad was the best gardener in the neighborhood, best gardener in the country, as far as he knew. He said, okay, son, what do you see here? And Ed Green said, well, looks like you've done a lot of work gardening. Looks like everything's fine. And his dad said to him, I'm a little bit disappointed in you, son. What I hoped you would see, that you would notice, is that as long as the vegetables are green, they're still growing. As soon as they get ripe, they start to rot. You get the illustration? What he's saying is that when we get right, when we think we know it, when we're not open to learn anymore, we start to rot. And the fact is, if somebody looks at me, or if I hear that somebody says, well, I've already heard that stuff, and it's, I already know it all, well, that person's relationship is probably suspect. And I have to say, you're right, you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to learn the blooming thing. So that's what I mean when I say, you asked, where is everybody? Well, I don't have any, I've been in this business long enough to not have any expectations. If the time that you think, man, there's something good going to happen, and you think 5,000 people ought to show up, 5 show up. Well, why be disappointed? When you think 5 people are going to show up, 5,000 people show up, and you just taken by surprise. You don't know what to do. So I don't expect anything anymore. But remember that. 3 things are hard to do. 3 things are very hard to do. Climb a fence that's leaning towards you, kiss a girl that's leaning away from you, and teach somebody something that doesn't want to be taught. So I hope you're here to be taught tonight. As long as the vegetables are growing, they're still growing. Ed Green's dad, whoever he is. C, an optimist is a person who, when he wears out his shoes, just figures he's back on his feet. It's good, huh? A pessimist says, I'll believe it when I see it. And an optimist says, I'll see it when I believe it. An optimist takes action. A pessimist takes a seat. An optimist sees a glass half full. A pessimist sees a glass half empty. The reason? One is putting water into the glass, the other is taking water out. It is universal truth. The person taking from society with no real effort to contribute to society is pessimistic and often fatalistic because he fears there won't be enough for him. The person who is doing his best and making a contribution to society is optimistic and confident because he is personally working on the solution. William James said, we can alter our lives by altering our attitudes. So that's the point. The first point I want to make tonight, is that our attitude in what we desire in a relationship makes all the difference in whether we're going to be a success in a relationship or not. So if you're here to learn, you're starting off with the right attitude. Okay? I hope you go out of here with your shoes worn out, but your feet on the ground. Second page, beauty. You've heard that saying before? Now I like coming up with what I think are catchy titles. Sometimes I come up with funny things, and Kathleen just kind of sits there and looks at me, being the pure choleric that she is. It's hard to make a choleric laugh a lot of times. It's hard to make a phlegmatic laugh. If those terms don't mean anything, wait till the third session. You'll understand fully what I'm talking about. But I like catchy titles and phrases and stuff. I like subtitles because it can kind of clarify what I intended with the title. Not that I think you're too stupid to really figure it out, but hey, I like having fun. So, beauty in the eye of the beholder. You've heard that before? Or, subtitle, if beauty is only skin deep, no one is very pretty without their skin on. I loved it. It just came to me in a flash, one of those things. Yeah. Well, you're thinking, what kind of goofball would have ever written that for him to get a hold of? Huh? Yeah, I made that up. You can take that home with you. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Or, if beauty is only skin deep, no one is very pretty without their skin on. You say, what in the world's that got to do with anything? Well, probably nothing, but it got your attention. So let's go on. Right? Okay. You've all got a little square on your book there. Let's do a little exercise here. Everybody got a pencil or a pen? If you don't, I'll try to find you one. I've got 2 pens if you want to borrow one. You got one? You'll need that. Everybody okay? I'll let you have that one. Isn't that lovely? Found that at the park the other day. A chair? Sure. Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Denise. She just had surgery a few days ago. I don't remember what day exactly. She had surgery, had her gallbladder. I had her gallbladder removed, and I think Yeah, I should have asked. See how insensitive men can be?
I didn't even think
Who would know?
that's where I am.
Well,
Well, no one knew I had that.
well, I did. Yeah, I've got a lot to learn, don't I? Yeah. Thank you. You want my recliner from out of my office? Huh? All right. Look at that box there with all the little boxes in it. Let me start over here. Larry, how many boxes do you see there? How many squares? Now, I've drawn one up here so that I can do it for everybody, so that everybody can see it. Huh? You count 16? You see 16 boxes. How many do you see? Ah, okay. How many do you see? But next, see, you got a man. See, that's one of the strengths of the male. So you have to be able to use logic and figure things out. Really, I'm serious. You see 17 then. She saw 16. How many see, Eddie?
16.
16?
No mistake for that.
Okay. You see 16 boxes? That's another one of the strengths of the male is one of the biggest complaints I hear from women, because I do a lot of counseling, and of course I got to watch that word anymore because of the legal ramifications anymore. It's what did you tell me this morning? It's a good phrase. Advisement. Yeah, spiritual advisement. See, I don't counsel because I don't have a big old certificate on my wall, but so in my advisement, one of the greatest complaints that I hear from women is also how Hicks, what's his name? The book that I gave you to read. Anyway, Hicks, how he starts it. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from women is he won't stop and ask for directions. Right? So that's another strength of the male, is that he can make up his mind and don't try to talk him out of it. I mean, we're going to conquer. We're out to conquer, and get out of my way, or you'll get conquered along with it. How many you see, Jennifer?
22.
Oh, you're in a little bit more of an elite group than Larry down there. How many see, Bo?
17.
17 he sees. How many do you see?
I saw 16 first of all, so I'll stay with that.
Okay, you see 16.
I see more than that now.
Okay, well, go ahead. Tell me what you see after, because you get the benefit of everybody else's stupidity. Mistakes. Hope they didn't hear that.
I changed.
You want to change it? Go ahead.
26.
26, okay. Now, I'm not taking score here, okay? Excuse me. So how many do you see?
22.
22? How many do you see?
25.
You see 25. Okay?
Squares, not rectangles, right?
Yeah, well, I made them as perfectly square as I could. I think they're pretty square. Actually,
They are, but I mean, you can do
perfect squares. Oh, yeah, no, perfect squares.
Okay.
No, we want perfect squares, okay? Okay, the largest number we've come up with so far is how many? 26. Somebody had a 26.
Isn't there 27? Didn't somebody say 27?
Somebody said a 26.
I hear you.
You did. You're closer than all of them, but you're still wrong. Not that you're wrong, but let me just show you, okay? Now, you may want to write this. You might want to take a pen or pencil and mark these things down, okay? Now, I hope I can do it, because I didn't mark it on mine. I ran out of time this afternoon. But let me show you. Okay, obviously, there are the 16 that you saw within the large square. Now, we're assuming that my artwork is perfect here, because I am sure that it is, and that it is a perfect square, and that all of the little squares are perfect squares, okay? That's the assumption we're making. So, we've got 16 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 16 squares within the larger square. So there are 17 squares there, right? Okay, so we're on the right track. There's 18. 19. 20. 21 squares, right? There's 22, right? There's 23. Could you see over here? 24. Where are we now? There's 24. There's 25. 26. 27. 28. 29, 30 squares. All right? You say, what's that got to do with anything? Nothing. Got your attention, didn't it? It does have everything to do with what I'm talking about. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Perception is everything. Perception is everything. Even if it's wrong perception, it is truth to the person perceiving it. Right? Point number 2 that I want to make. Point number 1 was, of course, what? Attitude. Number 2, perception can change. Your perception about something can change. 2 things about what this little exercise we just did about perception. An in-depth look at that reveals considerably more than a casual glance, didn't it? It's true of squares. It's true in life. It's true in relationships. It's true of truth. Second thing about that number 2 point, most of us occasionally need someone else to point out the obvious to us, and sometimes the not so obvious. The most obvious thing it seems in the world is that a husband and wife come together, or two people in an engagement relationship, or 2 friends, or parents and children, or vice versa. It seems the most obvious thing in the world that they should be able to relate to one another properly. And yet, the not so obvious thing is that, frankly, we didn't come out of the womb with a handbook, with a written rule book on how to relate, how to be good kids, how to be good siblings, how to be good parents. And so sometimes it takes somebody else to point out the obvious to us, or the not so obvious. C, the purpose of this seminar will be to draw out the better, more positive you to get more out of your relationships, but more important than that, to be able to give more of yourself into your relationships in order to derive the greatest benefit from those relationships. Okay? We having fun yet? Okay, well, we're not doing cartwheels over the Rio Grande yet, so, or whatever it is we did.
Not backwards.
All right, let's go through the overview real quick. Like I said, we've got a long ways to go and a short time to get there, so we're going to try to plug away at this. I was telling them before some of you others got here that what we're going to try to do, I'm going to try to do this. Now listen, I've got enough information, and I'm compiling just as an aside here, I'm compiling besides all of the notes that we'll be using, I'm compiling a bibliography. I've got I'm working on some little worksheets for you to do as parents, or as whatever, in order to do some little worksheets to kind of find out where you're at in your relationships, where you want to go in your relationships, and what it's going to take to get you to those places in your relationships. How many in here would agree that you are not at the place in your relationships, and by relationships, I mean those close relationships, whether parental relationships, children relationships, sibling, husband, wife, whatever the case may be, that you're not in the place? How many would admit that you're not in that place that you'd like to be? Okay. That's probably a rhetorical question, or you wouldn't be here, right? So, anyway, I've got a bibliography. I've got a whole list of books to pass on to you for you to read. I've got virtually all of them in my library or access to them. If you want to borrow them from me, if you want to buy them and get them in your library, but they're excellent, excellent resources that'll help you for the rest of your life in this area of relationships. All right, let's just kind of run through the overview here. Session 1, Marriage Workshop, that's this one tonight. We're going to be doing some things that will help us to understand the dynamics of relationships. Primarily marriage relationships, but whether you're single, looking at getting married, single because you used to be married and not anymore, or whatever the case may be. Understanding some dynamics of relationship. We're going to learn some things about some very vital differences between men and women. Now, I asked this the other day in church. How many men know that women are different And every man in the room held up her hand. But the problem is we don't know how. We know you're different, and I don't mean just physically. Obviously, there's some very obvious differences, but there's some very real innate differences that men, if we can learn to understand these differences, doesn't mean that we'll be able to relate to them, but we'll be able to communicate in a way that will have a profound impact on how your wife relates to you. I'm serious. I've seen it work. I've seen it work in my life. I've seen it work in other people's lives as I've ministered and spiritually advised people. I've seen these things radically transform relationships. I've seen them work, and so it's adamant. It behooves us to learn what it is that makes the woman tick. And in learning that, men, we're going to learn how to honor. And I'll talk about honor just a little bit later, what it means to honor someone. But that's really what it boils down to, is learning to honor the differences, learning to recognize and honor, add value to the differences in our mate. And it works the other way around. Learning to recognize why it is that the man is made up that way, why he won't stop for directions. I mean, face it, how many of you have been on a vacation, a trip someplace, downtown Albuquerque, one-way street, Lead Street and Cold Street goes this way, and you're going up the wrong street, headed the wrong direction, and you won't stop to ask where you're supposed to be going. It's built into me. So you'll understand why a man is wired that way, why he does things like that. Learn to recognize and value your mate's differences. C, improving relationships by learning to honor, that is, place value, esteem your spouse, friend, children, etc., etc. Session 2, we'll be talking about the home, heaven on earth. A, focus determines direction. Direction determines destination. I got that little axiom, or actually it's not an axiom, it's a truth, really. But I got that earlier this year. When I was on about 13, 14 days into a extended fast, and God spoke that to me so very clearly that man, it was like not an audible voice, of course, but it just rang so true in my spirit, in my heart, that there was no question about its truth. And let me just briefly explain what that means. Focus determines direction. How many of you have been driving down a road on that long trip to California or Texas or wherever to visit relatives, whatever reason, and you find yourself you get yourself a front door, big old 18-wheeler, and you're tooling around behind him, and man, you cross 3 states, you're still following the same truck, and the guy, you find yourself just kind of almost mesmerized following this guy, and he starts drifting over towards the shoulder, and before you realize it, you find that you've moved over to the white line at the shoulder. Anybody ever done that? No? Come with me on a trip. I'll show you what it's like.
Followed anybody through 3 states.
Well,
I know what you're saying.
yeah, you understand what I'm saying. You can be, whatever you're focused on is what's going to determine your direction. That happens in driving, it happens in life, it happens in relationships. If you set out to be a success in widget selling, then that is, if that is your focus and your only motivation is to be a success at selling widgets, then that's going to determine the direction that your life goes. And everything that you do, your entire motivation, your intent, your purpose is to be a success. And it doesn't matter if you run over men, women, and children. To get to that goal, that's the direction that your life is going to take. And it's that way in everything in life. Now, focus, whatever you're focused on, is going to determine your direction. The corollary to that is that direction determines destination. Now, you'll understand this hopefully more clearly than you understood the first part. I understood it like a bell. Direction determines destination. Whatever the direction of your travel is going to determine where you end up. I can't walk this way and end up in the bathroom, can I? No. The direction of travel determines your destination. So wherever you set your focus is where you're going to direct, is going to be your direction. Wherever you set your direction is where that's going to lead you. That's why kids that start out playing with Ouija boards as a game, if it's not corrected, at some point it'll lead into deeper and deeper and deeper excesses in the occult. to the extent of out-and-out demonism and Satan worship and cutting cats' heads off, and I know wherewith I speak. Same with drugs. I share with this, especially with young kids that I'm spiritually advising in the area of drugs. I was convinced that marijuana was not addictive, and I was convinced that smoking marijuana wouldn't lead to other things. I was convinced you could smoke pot and not get into coke and all the other hard drugs. And I used to say, marijuana is not addictive. I smoked it for 15 years. I ought to know. Well, the fact is, focus determines direction, and direction determines destination. You start out with pot, and I guarantee you, it will lead the temptation. Now, maybe there may be some strong types, or for whatever reason don't, but 99% of the time, it will draw to a deeper and deeper and deeper excess, whether it's with cocaine, heroin, whatever. Same with alcohol. Social drinker starts out with a couple of martinis at lunch, and if that is the focus, that determines the direction, and one martini leads to three martinis leads to, I'm living proof of that. Man, I could drink anyone under the table that I knew until I passed out, of course, but, so a few beers after work leads to a few more beers after work, leads to, one thing after another, it leads to deeper and deeper bondages. So that's what that means. Focus determines direction. Direction determines destination. B, learning the art of family living. It is an art that has to be learned, and we can learn these things. C, building a fire in the rain. Anybody ever tried to build a fire in the rain? It takes commitment, doesn't it? It takes perseverance. It takes real dedication and devotion to do whatever, to cover that thing up, to keep lighting the match, to do whatever's got to do to keep it. I kind of put as an aside there, anyone can teach me to build a fire, but I need someone to help teach me to keep it going. The biblical corollary of that is better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. Ecclesiastes 3 says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. How many people do you know that have set out to do something marvelous, turn the world upside down, invent a better mousetrap and the world will beat its path to your door? How many people do you know that have set out to do something stupendous, something great with their lives, and 20 years later they're still digging ditches? It takes perseverance. It takes commitment. It's that way with relationships. I'm going to tell you right up front, it ain't easy. It's not easy building good, strong relationships. They don't just happen. They don't just kind of fall out of the sky. Good, strong families take hard work and perseverance and starting again and doing it again and again and again and again. I tell people that smoke, if you want to quit smoking, well, quit. And if you pick up a cigarette for whatever, because you're nervous or keyed up or something drastic happens in the family and you pick up another pack of cigarettes, well, don't let that deter you. Don't get disappointed. Don't get discouraged. It's okay to be disencouraged, but discouragement is from the devil. Don't get discouraged. Quit again. And if you pick them up again, well, then quit again and keep quitting until eventually it's going to stick. It will stick. Don't quit. Don't give up. Persevere. Hang on. Session 3, we're going to talk about temperament. Now, this was one of my favorites. I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. How many of you have done anything with the temperament types, or have you? What are you?
Sanguine.
Are you pure? You're not pure sanguine. I would guess, just because I've known you for a few years, not closely, but I would guess that you've got a lot of phlegmatic,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, it was about half and half.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. Yeah. See, when you start understanding some things about the personality, we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. I can hardly wait for that one. That'll be the third session. And now the intent of this, number one, is not to categorize, because you can't categorize people. You can't put them in a box. Everybody is unique. Everybody is different. But studies have shown for centuries and centuries. In fact, it all started with Plato back in Greek history. Was the first one to coin these phrases. And the personality types all came from they have to do with body fluids, and the superstitious understanding of the personality of the body fluids was that, well, for instance, the melancholy was associated with the bile, or the black bile, very low, very melancholy, very moody, very easily depressed. Yeah, the choleric, on the other hand, was had to do with let's see, let me get to the sanguine. In fact, you look the word sanguine up, and it will say having to do with the blood, red-blooded, hot-blooded, very very active. And I'm going to pick, I've got five personality types picked out. There are four basic personality or temperament types that everybody falls into these categories. Now, very seldom is any person 100% of one thing. Just like I asked her, she's I would say predominantly even phlegmatic and then sanguine, maybe the other way around, I don't know. But I've got a little quiz, I'll have it in the packet, and you'll go through this little quiz, this little worksheet, and you'll find out some things about yourself. In fact, you're going to have a lot of fun. You'll be going through these, and the one sitting next to you that really knows, he's going to go, that's you, yeah, I knew it.
Different ones in college, like the A-type.
Right.
That's the kinds I don't know.
Okay. You're going to find, Carol, that essentially they're all the same. Now, there are several other authors, several other writers that use. In fact, I met a man. I'd like to find. I can't remember his name, but I met a man down in Denver at one of the Promise Keepers meetings about 2-3 years ago, who had written a book and done the personality types. And I can't remember precisely how he defined them and the allegories or the illustrations that he used, but they were different from what I'm using here. This is just one type. But you're going to find it invariably all the different methods of defining and describing the personality types are all essentially the same. They're just maybe a little bit different in verbiage or terminology and that. But essentially the personality types are all identical. Same thing. Psychiatrists use them, psychologists, clinical psychologists, counselors. They all use these things in ministering to their clients, their patients. So this man, I need to find that. The one I'm using defines them this way: choleric, with the old Greek terms: sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholy. I have picked out 4 personality types who are almost to a T 100% of that. Now I'll just name them for you. Brad Scott. Now, not knowing anything about what the personality types are, that this isn't going to make a lot of sense to you. But when we get to that one session, you'll understand fully. Brad Scott is 100% sanguine. Judy Scott, his wife, is 100% melancholy. Another melancholy we have in church. And I'm trying to pick people that you know, because you see them in action, you see how they relate to people, how they do, how they are. And then when we go through the personality types and all of the characteristics that define that personality type, you're going to say, yep, that's Brad. That man, he's got the spotlight all the time. See, the life of the party, he walks in the party, first thing he does is find out where the brightest light is, and the most people. He can get the people around, tell them a joke or something, and have a party, see? Well, you're going to find that, and I'm trying to pick people that you'll know so that you can relate to these people and understand what the personality types are from experience, see? Brad Scott, 100% sanguine. Kathleen Williams is almost 100% choleric. Now, I'm choleric sanguine in that order. Almost 50-50 sanguine, choleric sanguine. Actually, I had probably, every time I've taken this test, maybe 1 or 2 in the other 2, but I think those were a mistake. So, his wife, Brad's wife, is a 100% melancholy. I'll tell you another melancholy, almost 100%, is Lynn Williams. Lynn Williams and his daughter. He's got a daughter, Melanie Williams, almost 100% melancholy. So I'm trying to pick some people that you know that are 100% of any one personality type. Now, the 4th personality type is the phlegmatic, kind of laid back, really does, nothing bothers him, just real easy going. Who can you think of that we know? A mutual friend? No, let's use somebody else. The phlegmatic is the one, you got a bucket of hot water and you've got tea bags and you got coffee. What would you like? You want coffee or tea? Oh, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Well, I've got either one. What do you want?
You're
Well,
the one consuming it. What do you
don't, it's maddening to a choleric. I mean, a choleric I want black coffee, a little bit of creamer, 1 spoon of sugar. You know, a choleric knows exactly what he wants, and he wants it now. He wants it done right, and he wants it done right now. A phlegmatic, what do you want? Well, don't put yourself out. Whatever's easiest. I got it right here. What do you want? Oh, coffee or tea, it's okay. See? Buddy Russell is almost 100% phlegmatic. See? So, what I'm going and we're going to have a lot of fun with that one. I need to get off this because time's, well, we're doing all right, I guess. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. You're going to get a lot out of this. Now, number one, the person isn't, the reason for this is not to categorize everybody, but you're going to find, when you understand some things about the personality types, one thing that you're going to find, and this is the intent of it, you're going to find that why other people act and do things and react the way that they do. And you're going to find that other people can be different without being And so I get into a marriage relationship, and what's the first thing I want to do? Well, I want to straighten her out. I want to, hey, come on, girl, get with the program. If you'd organize and if you'd do everything the way that I do it, then our relationship would be hunky-dory. See? And the same thing happens the other way around. The wife has expectations of what she wants out of a marriage. She's grown up with an image in her mind of what a perfect husband is going to be, and because her personality type does and reacts and responds in a certain way, then she gets into a marriage relationship, and what's the first thing she wants to do? She wants to change the husband into that image that she has of what a perfect husband is supposed to be like. See, it works both ways. What? Yeah, it is. I'll even go a little bit further. It's idolatry, but we won't talk about that right now. It really is. We want to transform our mate or our friend, our boyfriend, girlfriend, into the image of what we think that person ought to be. Well, in understanding the personality types, you're going to be able to pick out. You can do it with your kids. You'll learn what your children are, with the personality types. Lord knows how we ever ended up with one, but we've got a melancholy in our family. I mean, oh, Lord. Melancholy is the kind that, just like the names, are very easily depressed, very deep thinkers, very well organized. They love charts and maps, and they're the musicians and the poets. Michelangelo was a melancholy and plan everything out just right and use charts and spend an eternity painting on the Sistine Chapel so it's just right. But, my Lord, melancholy is the one that if he can't throw the baseball as well as his brother, which he can't, he just, he winds up, goes over here, I'll never be any good. I'm no good. I can't do anything right. See, that's a melancholy. We've got a pure melancholy in our family. But when you understand the personality types, you can quit trying to transform them into another type and learn to start drawing the strengths, because every personality type has a certain number of strengths, certain strengths and certain weaknesses. What we want to learn to do is build up and draw on the strengths of the personality and minimize the weaknesses of those personality types. And so when we learn these things about our mates and friends and other people, our children, you can learn, when you learn these dynamics, it can literally transform how your relationships work. You can end up with better children, a better wife, a better husband. Let me go on. Temperament types. Now, that's what we'll do, is deal with the 4 personality types, the basic types, what they are, how they operate. B, the personality strengths. Then we're going to look at the personality weaknesses. And then D, at the last probably 30 minutes of the session, we're going to work at how to improve our own. See, because that's really what we're going to be studying. The purpose is not to somehow learn to change the other personality, but rather work on my strengths in order to draw the strengths out of that other person, right? And that's what it's all about, improving your personality. Session 4, the basis of relationship. The outline goes something like this: looking up, and then looking in, and then looking out. B, giving is getting. C, rules without relationship equals rebellion. You ought to memorize that. You ought to write it in the tables of your heart. You ought to stamp it on your forehead, on the back of your hand. Rules without relationship is going to equal rebellion. The 3 R's. When we grew up, went to school, the 3 R's were reading, writing, arithmetic. They don't have that without outcome-based education anymore. But reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, the 3 R's in relationship is this: demanding, unbending rules where there's no relationship is going to equal rebellion. Always, always, always. And it works with children. It works with a wife. It works with a husband. It works with employees. It works with employers. Where there's not relationship, that's why you have so many PKs. You know, everybody know what a PK is? If you grew up in the church, you know what a PK is. Preacher's kids, yeah. That's why you have so many preacher's kids that are in rebellion. I know friends. I've tried to minister to a man that I used to study karate and kung fu and some other stuff with, and his name is Donnie Lee. Serious, true story. He's got a brother. He still lives right here in town. His brother's name is Bruce Lee, but that's beside the point. But I talked with him last time, probably a couple of years ago, and this man had gone to Bible college, Baptist Bible College down in Texas, and it just blew his mind. Blew his mind because here he was in a school, in an environment where the kids, the students, the people were supposed to be the cream of the crop, spiritually speaking, and they were supposed to be the ones who were spiritual and living righteous lives. And they'd get out of school on Friday nights. They'd leave their holiness doctrine class on Friday afternoon, head for the showers, and go out and party all weekend, jump in a sack, drink beer. I mean, just all kinds of ungodly activities. And it blew his mind. He dropped out, and dropped out of Bible college, and he just went haywire. That's why you have so many PKs, preachers' kids, that grow up in an environment where the parents are living holy lives, but they're not modeling a holy life. They're making demands. They make demands. Okay, you have to do this because it's the scriptural thing to do. It's the biblical thing. It's the right thing to do. You can't smoke. You can't dance. You can't rock and roll. You can't do any of these things. And so, it makes me think of a song. Your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock. So they lay down all these rules, but they're too busy being a success in church. And it happens with deacons across the country. It happens with preachers. It happens with evangelists. It happens with Sunday school teachers. It happens with Christians of all walks, in all walks. They lay down the rules, but they're too busy being a success in the church to build solid foundational relationships with the children. And they see that, and when they're old enough to get away from it all, they rebel. Why? Because there's no relationship been established. Just a bunch of rules that doesn't mean anything. So rules without relationship leads to rebellion, always. Okay? We're going to look at those things. Dogmatic? No. Well, yeah. It's kind of like the bias thing I talked about, remember? You got something on your mind that I'm not aware of?
No, it sounds like my upbringing.
Well, it does, yeah. Yeah. And what happened? Rebellion, big time. For a long time, huh?
Years.
Yeah. And your sisters?
They're still rebelling.
Still in rebellion.
Yeah.
Sure. Brothers, you bet.
Still rebelling.
That's right. All right, let's jump to the next page. Session 1, marriage. We've got 30 minutes, or maybe 29 minutes. What we talked about before you guys and Janice got here was doing these in 1.5 hour sessions. I am going to really try to do it in an hour and a half. Is that okay with everybody? Is an hour and a half too long? If we need to, we can stretch them out. You know, if we need to do it, if it's what this is for you. This isn't for me. I already know it all, okay? Well, I already know everything, so why are you laughing? This is for you, really. So, I want to make it easy for you. I want you to be able to get as much information as you can, not just to have knowledge, but to put it into practice, to be doers of the word, not hearers only. Because I'm telling you, these things will transform your relationships. I have seen these things transform a relationship in a matter of days when a man has learned to honor, really honor, to recognize and value his mate's differences and to begin to bestow honor upon his wife. I mean, in a matter of days, I have seen instantaneous, like night and day, change in the relationship. I've seen the woman warm up and become sensitive and open. That's one of the problems in many relationships, is that because we don't understand these differences, the dynamics of the differences in physiological, which relate to very real psychological and spiritual differences between male and female. We don't understand these things, and what happens is because we're, like I put it down here, Fortran and COBOL. Men are speaking Fortran, the women are speaking COBOL. Everything that the woman tries to say and relate in communication, and women are communicators, by the way, is one of the things that we can really honor women for. Everything they try to say, we hear it with COBOL language, we translate it in COBOL, and we try to translate it into our language, and it makes no sense. And so the woman really gets to the point where I don't want to talk about it anymore. You don't listen, you don't do what you say you're going to do, I just don't want to talk about it. Guys, you ever had your wife say, I don't want to talk about it? One of the things that I've learned in relationship with, and my wife has taught me so much. She doesn't know it. I tell her often. But she's taught me a lot. One of the things she's taught me is that primarily, communication between a husband and wife the communication is nonverbal. When, and I'm sure this has never happened to you, but when I invite somebody home for dinner at 4 o'clock and they're coming over at 6, and I tell her at 5:30, oh, by the way, why do you do this to me? And she's running around trying to vacuum it. Well, what's the matter? Nothing. Clean up, pick up, and do stuff, cook something different. Are you mad? No. Well, honey, please, you want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it.
Busy getting ready.
I've learned that what that translates to is, yeah, she does want to talk about it, but not right then. And she doesn't really want to talk about it if she's tried to tell me before in words that I don't understand. That you don't do that to a woman, because to the woman, the house, she is identified with her house. She's identified with her surroundings. Let me just put it this way. The man, watch this and see if this doesn't happen. The man finds his fulfillment and his identity in what he does. The woman finds her identity and fulfillment in who she is and who she knows. My name's Preston McNutt.
Got to do that.
And what do you do?
I work in the oil field.
Yeah, see? I mean, does that happen? Does it happen all the time?
Yeah.
Name's Preston McNutt.
Larry Parker.
And what do you do? What do you,
Well, I drill water wells.
yeah, and what do you do? Well, I preach for life and remodel homes for a living. You see, but it happens all the time. You go and meet guys will get together in a hunting camp and meet somebody new. What's the first thing they start focusing on? They don't start talking about relationship. Do they? Huh? Now come on, do they? Absolutely not. Yeah. What do you do? Well, I work in the oil field, drill rat holes or whatever I do. Oh yeah? Well, let me tell you, when I was in the oil patch, right? It's a true story. Well, it's the way we're geared. It's the way we're wired. It's the way that we're made up. And so a woman finds her fulfillment. She can't separate. She finds it harder to separate herself from her surroundings. That's why the home is so vital. So if you take your wife out to dinner and say, "Come on, let's or head out for a vacation or whatever it is. You're gonna head over to the neighbors or something. And, get out to the car. I can't leave yet. The bed's not done. Or the dishes aren't done." Or you see, if something's undone in her surroundings, in her life, then she's undone. She is partly undone. That's why the kitchen is so important to the woman. Not because that's where she's supposed to be. I'm not talking about the old stereotypes, keep a woman barefoot and pregnant and, keep them in your place. And, I don't believe that stuff. But really, a woman finds her fulfillment in her surroundings and who she is and who she knows. A man finds his fulfillment in what he does. See, I'm telling you some very real, some differences here. So let me just read some of these statistics here. Did I make the point I was wanting to make? I hope I did. Sad statistics. 5 of 10 marriages end in divorce. B, according to clinical psychologist Neil Warren, the other 5 will stay together in varying degrees of disharmony. The other 5 will stay together for several different reasons because of the kids. I've heard that. My parents stayed together because of the kids. There were 7 of us. And I came from a background where I can remember seeing my father wing hair clippers across the kitchen table at my mother. And, I can remember, some really violent actions going on in my home as I grew up. I can remember him, bashing my sister up against the wall when for different reasons or whatever. Some really violent things going on like that. And so, but they stayed together. They stayed together right up to his death in 1977. Why? Well, it was certainly not out of honor or a mutual respect for the kids. And like Neil Warren says, the other 5 will stay together in varying degrees of harmony for different reasons. But disharmony is the operative word there. C, only 1 or 2 of the 10 will achieve what might be called intimacy, that mystical bond of friendship, commitment, and understanding. D, you'll see notes, and I've got a note page that'll be filled with different notes where I'm drawing information from in that. D, that occurs, quote, when a man and a woman, being separate and distinct individuals, are fused into a single unit, which the Bible calls one flesh. The human spirit craves this kind of unconditional love and experiences a kind of soul hunger when it is not achieved. I'm also certain that most couples expect to find intimacy in marriage, but somehow it usually eludes them. All right, Fortran and COBOL. Everybody familiar with what those 2 words mean? Fortran is, I don't know if they use it too much in the scientific community anymore. COBOL was more of a business program, business computer language. They're both computer languages is what they are. Fortran was used in the scientific community. Predominantly COBOL was a business application. But they're two different operations, 2 different languages altogether. If anybody's ever used computer now, you can't put I guess now since the merger, not a merger, but consolidation of standards for, I think now they're making software that will work on Macintosh as well as IBM. Didn't used to. You can't take an IBM computer program, plug it into a Apple computer. There you go, thanks. Coming out of that one. Into an Apple computer and expect it to work. It just won't work. It's 2 different languages, wired different. They're written differently. Well, that's the way men and women are. Physiological. Let's run through some of these. Now, you may want to take notes on some of these. I got 19 minutes. Some of these differences. Now, where we're headed here is to learn to recognize and value our mate's differences. In recognizing and valuing these differences, learning to honor or to add value or esteem. And this is true whether you're single or in parenting, increasing your parenting skills, whatever. Understanding these dynamics can help you to maintain a harmony with your wife, with your children, a harmony in the home that maybe has not been there up to now. As I've counseled with different people over the years and talking with friends and don't let this intimidate you, but many times just in conversation I tend to interview people, not in the sense of taking notes and getting question and answer, but in talking with people I find out things about about their own relationships, what they feel are important to them, what they have, what they see as their problems in their relationships, what they think can can be solutions, and I find a lot of answers that way. So in talking with friends and other people, counseling with people, one thing that I found out is we're all common. Men are men wherever they are in the world. Women are women, and there are things that are, and I'm not trying to stereotype women, but there are things that are indigenous or common to women the world over that men don't share. When I started out in this marriage, now I'll be right up front with you. I'm divorced. I've got two children, two grandchildren by both of those children, by the way, whom I've just now been reconciled with, and I'm just so thankful for that. But I'm divorced, and as I look back, I see problems, and I'm not talking about problems on her part. I'm talking about problems from my part that I just didn't understand. I just didn't know, and that's another one of the common complaints that I hear from women in marriage counseling is, I can't believe that he didn't know, whatever it was, in relationship, in communication, or is that I can't believe that he didn't know. Tells me I just don't believe that he didn't know. The fact is, girls, we don't know. We didn't know. We don't know how you're written. We don't know how you're wired. We don't know what it is that makes you click. So, let me tell you a little story. A woman went to a seminar like this, one of these relationship seminars, and she got all excited, got all of this information. Her husband didn't want to come with her, but she went, and she came home that night, and she said, "Honey, man, I just learned so. I wish you'd have gone. I learned so much at the seminar, and we got to start. One of the things that they told us at the seminar was we're going to have to start doing things together. We got to learn some hobby. We got to start learning to do something together, so that we've got something to lean on each other with and do things together with, so that when the kids grow up and move away from home, we don't have the empty nest syndrome." And the guy says, "Oh, empty nest? What are you talking about? What do you want to do?" She said, "Well, we got to learn it's a hobby to do something together." He said, "Well, what are you talking about? What do you want to do together?" "I want to go hunting. Teach me to hunt. I'll go hunting with you." "Come on, I don't want to go hunting with you. It's something I like to do alone. I don't want to take you, it's something guys get together. I don't want to teach you to hunt. Besides, don't listen to those guys. They travel all over the country. They talk to thee. They get paid to do this. Don't believe anything they say." Well, she finally talks him into, "Okay, all right, I'll teach you to hunt." So her birthday rolls around. He buys her a gun. That thrills her. Opening day of deer season comes along, and they go out, and they're out in the hills beating the brush, and they separate just like they're supposed to do. He goes off one direction, she goes off the other direction. All of a sudden, they're wandering around, and he hears this bang, bang. So, whoa, first day out on the hunt, she's already got some great, whoa, this is wonderful. So he starts making his way over where he hears the sounds, and he goes over there and gets a little closer, and he hears this big commotion, two voices yelling back and forth, a lot going on. He can't understand what's going on, so he gets up a little closer, and he listens. He hears this voice saying, "Okay, lady, you can have your deer. Just let me get my saddle off first." Well, when I married Delynn, I was kind of like that lady. And if we're honest, we're probably much like that. We didn't know what we're shooting at. I started doing this. I set out to learn. I got married, first of all. Man, we had a rocky 3 years. It was horrendous. It was, wow. I wondered. I didn't think it was going to last. It was on again, off, and it was that way before we were married. 3 years before we were married, we'd date and we'd break up. We'd date and we'd break up. We'd fight and then we'd make up, and we'd fight and we'd make up. I'd break a guitar over her car. She'd try to run over me, and we'd get back together. It was horrendous.
You knew you win.
Huh?
You knew you win.
Oh yeah, you remember, huh?
I remember.
Yeah. So.
You would have known. Well, you would know that the Lord can transfer.
Yeah. So exactly. See. So, we're kind of like the lady. I didn't know what I was shooting at. I didn't know what they're doing. If you were honest, you're probably going to say the same thing. Admit it. You don't know. You didn't know what you're doing. Shooting at something, we don't know what. Let me get my... I love that story, don't you? Is everybody warm enough? I thought Terry Patuan might be here tonight, so I cranked up the heat. She gets kind of cold, or she was the other night, so... Can we turn it down a little bit? I'll come this way.
Why are you doing that on the skin of the pants?
Okay, 13 minutes. Okay, we're getting there. We're going to get there. Who's buying ice cream tonight?
You're buying ice cream, is that what you said?
See, that's another strength of the woman.
I did, I actually missed it.
Oh, did you? I said, who's buying the ice cream tonight? Yeah. Good answer. Well, the problem was, see, because of the way that parenting was modeled for me. Now, thank God for a godly mother and for a mother who gave unconditional love. This is something that I won't be getting into in this series, but just briefly, as hard as she tried and as much as she unconditional, and see, that's what the human soul craves. And when a man marries a woman, or a woman marries a man, deep inside, that deepest need is to have somebody that accepts them. Would you agree with that? Somebody that accepts them just the way that they are. Unconditionally loving them. Thank God for a mother that loved her children unconditionally. Put no demands, not having to live up to any expectations, but just loving us for who we are. But in spite of all of that, the truth of the matter is that a child receives his or her emotional well-being, feelings of self-worth and self-esteem, the security, the knowledge that he or she is accepted, that all is right in the world. The world can be caving in around them, around a family. But if the relationship between the father and that child is right, everything's right with the world. Here's the way I put it, and I don't mean this in an idolatrous way, but it is truth. The man or the father is God with skin on. To the child growing up in a home, whether he's demonstrating righteous or unrighteous authority makes no difference. To the child, the man, not the woman. This is not taking anything away from the wife or for the mother, but the man is the one that imparts that feeling of self-esteem and righteousness and security and authority, because the father is the man, is God with skin on. So I grew up with that kind of modeling, and so I found myself doing the same thing my dad did. I was being the same kind of husband to my wife that my father was to me, was to his wife. I was being the same kind of, not a disciplinarian, but punisher. And there is a world of difference, folks, for those that have children. There's a world of difference between punishment and discipline. Punishment is getting even for a wrong done with no goal in sight. Discipline, on the other hand, is done with compassion, with love, with acceptance, so that and it can be done. I do it this way, and I had to learn to do it this way. It can be done in a way that there is imparted an acceptance, a separation of the deed from the person, so that the child knows that he's accepted, that he's not rejected because on the basis of what he did, and in that section, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But there's a world of difference between punishment and discipline. Well, I had to learn how to be a disciplinarian, a loving, correcting disciplinarian. So we model the way that we were parented. I was determined to learn how to relate to my wife. I set out, I started reading books. James Dobson, I get his material every month. I started reading books. I've got books that I've lent some of them out. Got some by Dr. Ed Cole on being a real man. There's a lot of things in this culture that we've lost, that we've missed, that we don't know how. Men don't know how to be a husband. We don't know. In fact, I'm going to tell you that most men grow up in this country not knowing whether they're men or not. I was 35 years old before I really And I'm not sure that I really, and I'm being honest and transparent with you, I'm not sure really, because of that deep-rooted lack, I'm not sure that I'm a man. I mean, that I'm fully a full-grown man. And let me explain that, okay, so you don't think there's something weird going on. The problem is, in this culture, we don't have a rite of passage. Every culture, and I'm going to try to find the book. Several years ago, I read a book where he did a doctoral thesis on various cultures throughout the world, throughout history, and every culture, every nation, every people group, every tribe throughout history has had a rite of passage. Let me just define a few of them for you. Give you a few of them, okay? The Hebrews have what's called when the boy turns 13, a bar mitzvah. For the girl, it's a bat mitzvah. A bar mitzvah. When they turn 13, they are coming of age where the father cuts the cord and says, okay, you are legally and morally responsible before God to keep his commandments before him. You are responsible to this society and to your culture, to your community, and to your family to be morally responsible for yourself. You are a man now. See? How many of you remember a movie called A Man Called Horse? Remember that movie? Kind of one of those, almost a cult kind of movie. I don't mean that in a sense, well, you understand. But in that movie, one of the most vivid images that stands out in my mind is where the star, I can't remember who it was, but he was in a Dustin Hoffman, yeah, and he was in a I think it was an Apache tribe or Comanche. Remember that? And they took eagle's talons, 2 eagle's talons, and this is a rite of passage, and this is true. Those groups, they don't do it anymore, but way back when, every Indian group had a different rite of passage. The rite of passage with this particular tribe was that they would take this, and I can remember him, they would lean him with ropes and take it, grab him, sink these talons into his chest, 2 talons right there, and what he had to do was, the ropes came down from a pole, and he had to go around this pole like this, leaning backwards with this thing just gripping and pulling his pectoral muscles out like that. You remember that scene? Well, it just grips me. Well, that was a rite of passage, and it was when a boy came of age and he wanted to declare his manhood, the men of the tribe would say, okay, you pass this rite of passage, and in the eyes of this tribe, and especially the warriors of this tribe, we will declare you to be a man. And so a boy would grow up, and he'd get to that age, and to be real honest with you, I still wouldn't be grown up, probably. And so they would do that. Well, other rites of passage, different tribes would have the boy, when he was ready to become a man, he'd have to take something very, there was another movie that showed this. I don't remember which one. But take something, a prized possession, maybe his favorite Tonka toy or something. They had them back then. And he'd have to take this thing and go for a 3-day journey. Now, I think that's kind of interesting, 3-day journey, but anyway, I won't get into that. He'd have to go up on a high mountain, treacherous trail. He'd have to cross raging torrents of the river and stay out there with no food, have to live off the land if he ate at all, and out sleep under the stars, and 3 days and 3 nights away from his family, all on his own, and you have to climb up this treacherous mountainside, cliffside, and leave this treasured possession. Once he had done that, then he could come home. And that was the rite of passage. When he had done that, the tribal elders would say, okay, you are a man. Every cult, I'll tell you one more, okay, just one more, and I'll quit on this. There was how many of you have bungee jumped since that thing came out? Larry, I'm sure, gutsy guy like you, how about you, Eddie? You don't bungee jump when they park the crane?
I won't even go to barricade anymore.
You don't, you send the hands up there to do that, right? I understand. Well, that whole trip, that whole fun thing of bungee jumping started because somebody got the idea from a tribe of Africans. Was it? Oh, you're right. The South America. Some of the South America. It wasn't the Alcan Indians. Who was it? What's Alcan? You're right. Thank you for correcting me.
They're called the voladores.
A woman corrected me in class. Okay.
That's the first ever.
That's a choleric trait. No, is it the first ever? No. I try to get corrected before I get in front of everybody, though. You're right.
She taught me before each class.
Okay, I'll be calling you. Okay. You're right. It was a South American Indian tribe, one of the Indian tribes down there, and that was a rite of passage. See? Yeah. Okay. Fine. Do you want to teach? You want to do this? Go ahead. No. What is it again?
The story, you tell it.
No. The what?
The voladores.
Voladores. The followers. Okay. These are flyers. Yeah. They were. Oh. Okay. I got you. See, I'm studying Spanish. I know this. They take jump off a side of a cliff or an overhang or a tree or whatever with a vine and head first. They tie it to their feet, to their ankles, and dive off and just like an arrow, just straight down. And it was tied so that hopefully, I think there probably were a few accidents where the guy didn't ever grow up into manhood beyond that point, but the idea was to just before his head hit the rope would run out and boing, up he'd go, and bounce a few times. And if he would do that, if he would pass that test of courage, then that was his rite of passage, and the tribal elders would declare him, okay, you're a man now. There again, I don't think I'd be grown up. I think I'd kind of hang back a little bit, wouldn't you? I don't know. You grow up in a culture and you do. We have rites of passage in growing up. Do you ever play chicken with knives when you're a kid? Sure, that's a rite of passage. But we don't have in this culture, and I'm only joking with you if I need correcting, go ahead, I can take it. It's one of the things that cholerics don't do well, but see, I've grown, so I can take a
I
correction.
think the unwritten rite of passage in this society now for young boys is that they have sex, and maybe it's always, I
Yeah.
don't know, but I think premarital, the 12, 13.
Right. You're right.
This is it.
And that is you're right, and I have to agree with that. But it's an unwritten rite of passage. It is a peer pressure rite of passage.
Yeah, it's distorted.
It's distorted. It's a perversion,
Since
right?
there is no other, maybe substitution.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is a major problem in this culture is that we don't have a father or fathers, tribal elders, or whoever. We don't have a father figure, a model, to say, okay, you are a man now, son. And I think that's a fault. I think it's a problem. And that's what I meant when I said I was 30 years old. And deep inside, I wasn't sure that I was a man because my father had never said, okay, son, you are a man. I respect you man to man as an equal. See? And boys need that. And for those that have sons, take this home with you because it is something that I fully intend to do with my sons as they grow older. I respect them as human beings, as people, as gifts from God, as someone who is just simply entrusted into my care because ultimately when they grow up, they're not mine. I'm going to have to present them to somebody else. And how they turn out is going to be my responsibility. So I treat them with respect, with dignity, and I discipline them on that level with respect, with honor, so that they feel honored even in discipline and correction. But I fully intend, when the time comes, to look them both in the eye and say, okay, I release you now. I release you from under my care. You are a man, and it is your responsibility to act and live and behave in the world as a man. So it's something that I feel like is missing in our culture, and it's something that every man, without fail, unless he was fortunate enough to have a father who was able to do this and bring him to that place where he could release him. But I don't know any personally. Do you? You follow what I'm saying? And that's why I say when I was 30 years old, and deep inside it is something that I don't struggle with it. It's not a struggle. It's not a problem. I am very well reconciled and adjusted because of what God has done in me and what my growth and maturity in that. But still, deep inside, there is that lack, that missing, that my father never did say, okay, son, you're a man. It'll never happen because he died in 1977. But it's something we can pass on as a blessing to ours. Yes?
Things like becoming 16 18, getting a driver's license, isn't that kind of a rite of passage, or becoming 18 and go in the army, or
Mhm.
the beer
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
those?
Those are rites of passage, but they're not formal and they're not declared. Again, those are mostly peer. What Jennifer was saying, they're peer rights, and they're assumed rights. They're assumed by the peers, by the individuals, by the groups, but never is there a I call it formal. I don't know if that's the right term, but never is there a formal rite of passage where the boy can look up and recognize that, hey, I can stand with my head high, my chin up, and my chest stuck out, and that's another man thing. In fact, I told everybody down south, I learned something at the beach last summer. I can't hold my stomach in all day. But that's... Yeah. What?
I said, I just thought of an invention for you.
Okay.
I just thought maybe you could fast some.
But yeah, it works, I'll tell you. And I'm ready for another one, I really am.
How
But-
about skin-colored girl for you? With hair on it.
With hair on it, right? Yeah, right there. An out belly. But I used to have an innie, but it's an outie now. We could probably get rich on stuff like that, you know what? Well, I'm going to close it down because I want to be, I didn't get through a lot of the differences that I wanted to, so I'm going to pick it up from there, and if it's okay with you guys, I'll try to get through these, and I'll try to be slow enough you can write them all down. But these differences need to be outlined for you because it's going to really clarify some things for you and help you. So,
I was just going to make a comment when a woman meets, when women meet each other, I just was thinking about, I met this woman this week, and she's some doctor she's doing a study out here, and I loved her name, and I said, oh, I just love your name, and where are you from? And pretty soon we were talking about, well, how'd you feel about that?
exactly. See?
We're the feelings, and
You
with
bet.
most women, not all, but
Yeah.
most women can do, they can tell their life story.
Yeah.
Their first
You bet.
marriage, how they felt, their children, and the whole ball of wax, and how
Exactly.
they felt that day, and how.
Exactly. Exactly.
Men probably think we're divulging
Deep, dark secrets.
Deep, dark secrets. And, oh, really? That's just how I felt.
Exactly.
I had to
See,
say it.
and I appreciate you bringing that up because it confirms what I'm going to be sharing with you coming from someone out there, see? What you said something about feeling. You can talk to another woman about how you felt about something. See, you say that to a man, how do you feel about your job? Fine. What does that mean? So, I mean, yeah. Is this conversation going anywhere? If there's no goals, if there's not something to conquer, I don't want to talk about it. When the facts are all done, it's over.
Yeah, well,
But-
most people anymore, how's your job? Same thing,
Yeah,
different day.
exactly,
There you go.
exactly.
You
Of course,
just
the
walk
vernacular in the patch is a little bit different, but yeah,
Yeah.
same stuff, different day. So, exactly, feeling, and there's a reason. There's a physiological reason for that. I used it, and I need to apologize. Okay, I said bipolar the other day. That is a chemical problem, huh? It's not. Women are not bipolar, and it is. Women are bilateral. Okay. Yeah. Bilateral. That's why women are more in touch with their feelings, and it's not an old wives' tale. It's not just something to tease the women about. It's true because statistically, this holds true for 80% of all women, and the things about the men, 80% holds true for the men. Men are left brain. Left brain dominant is where the logic and the mathematics, the numbers, the rational thinking and the conquering, the aggressive behavior comes from that side. Women, on the other hand, are bilateral, not bipolar, but bilateral. Something happens, and I want to share some of these physiological things. You can study these out in medical books, textbooks, wherever you want to. You'll find them and confirm it. But women are bilateral. They think with both sides of their brain. Now, the right side of the brain is where the feelings, the emotions, and the poetry. You write a poem. You give a hug. You the feeling part of the brain. And so 80%, it holds true pretty much about 80% for women, that they are right brain dominant, but they are able to utilize both. That's why women are able to take in, frankly, more information. They're easier to teach in school academically. Men are harder to teach in school. We don't take in as much information because we're left brain. You said something about feeling. You can talk to another woman about. You can talk for 5 hours, 3 hours. My wife calls Raina, my son's wife over in Nevada. I'll get on the phone, talk to Sean. How's it going? Fine. But work going okay? Yeah. Going up, he's a air traffic controller. Go up the tower, come down the tower, go home, go on days off. That's about it. Okay, cool. You doing okay otherwise? The baby okay? Yeah. Raina doing okay? Yeah. Okay, here's Dylan. And then Raina and Dylan will get on the phone, and they talk for hours. I'm thinking, oh my, man, we do this every week. Look at this phone bill, Dylan. Somebody got to pay for this. But they talk for hours. Well, how's the baby doing? What's the room look like? Have you put new blankets? Has it got, has it, all the different things, because it has to do with relationship, it has to do with feeling, it has to do with communication. So that's why it's just difficult for a man to talk on a feelings level, because we don't understand. We want to conquer a conversation. We don't want to talk about feelings. And then we'll close with this right now.
But it is possible.
It is possible. Yes. Yes, it is. And that's the amazing thing about the human brain. And I would have brought that up, because I don't want anybody going away thinking that everything's set in concrete, everything's rigid, because it's not. Men, we can learn. We can learn. It's the amazing thing about the human brain. We can learn to think with the right brain. And women can learn to operate from the left side. There's nothing set in concrete. We can learn. And some amazing, amazing things begin to happen when we start learning and start doing these things. So, see, there's already communication going on.
I just said, should we take him by and show him the drapes she tried to put up?
Uh-oh.
Come back next week, we'll share that one with you.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, see, things like that, I think you're going to have a lot of stories to be able to share with us and share with each other about experiences and bondings that have taken place. So,